Hello, Paige LaGrange here for day 16 of our Fahrenheit 451 adventure. And we're reading this with permission from Simon & Schuster Publishing, and we wish to send them our most sincere thanks. I hope you're enjoying this story, and I hope that you also had a wonderful holiday weekend. Today we're going to pick up where we left off on Friday. And if you remember on Friday, Montauk and Millie were reading books, and Millie was not real easy about it. And they had a visitor at the door, and at first they thought it was Beatty, and then they never answered, and so he kind of left. And the next thing, there was this scratching at the door, and Millie thought it was just a dog. But Montauk's reaction seems a little bit different, so I'm not sure if it was a dog or not. We're going to find out maybe. But we're going to pick up there, again, with Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. And so, yeah, let's get started. Put my marker in here real quick. Okay. I've heard rumors. The world is starving, but we're well fed. Is it true the world works hard and we play? Is that why we're hated so much? I've heard the rumors about hate too, once in a long while, over the years. Do you know why? I don't. That's sure. Maybe the books can get us half out of the cave. They just might stop us from making the same insane mistakes. I don't hear those idiots in your parlor talking about it. Goodness, Millie, don't you see? An hour a day, 2 hours with these books, and maybe. The telephone rang. Mildred snatched the phone. Anne, she laughed. Yes, the White Clown's on tonight. Montauk walked to the kitchen and threw the book down. Montauk, he said, you're really stupid. Where do we go from here? Do we turn the books in? Forget it? He opened the books to read over Mildred's laughter. Poor Millie, he thought. Poor Montauk. It's mud to you, too. But where do you get help? Where do you find a teacher this late? Hold on. He shut his eyes. Yes, of course. Again, he found himself thinking of the green park a year ago. The thought had been with him many times recently, but now he remembered how it was that day in the city park when he had seen that old man in the black suit hide something quickly in his coat. The old man leapt up as if to run, and Montauk said, Wait! I haven't done anything, cried the old man, trembling. No one said you did. They sat in the green soft light without saying a word for a moment, and then Montauk talked about the weather, and then the old man responded with a pale voice. It was a strange, quiet meeting. The old man admitted to being a retired English professor who'd been thrown out upon the world 40 years ago when the last liberal arts college shut for lack of students and patronage. His name was Faber, and when he finally lost his fear of Montauk, he talked in a cadenced voice, looking at the sky and the trees and the green park. And when an hour had passed, he said something to Montauk, and Montauk sensed it was a rhymeless poem. Then the old man grew even more courageous and said something else, and that was a poem too. Faber held his hand over his left coat pocket and spoke these words gently, and Montauk knew if he reached out, he might pull a book of poetry from the man's coat. But he did not reach out. His hand stayed on his knees, numbed and useless. I don't talk things, sir, said Faber. I talk the meaning of things. I sit here and I know I'm alive. That was all there was to it, really. An hour of monologue, a poem, a comment, and then, without either acknowledging the fact that Montauk was a fireman, Faber was with a certain trembling, wrote his address on a slip of paper. "For your file," he said, "in case you decide to be angry with me." "I'm not angry," Montague said, surprised. Mildred shrieked with laughter in the hall. Montague went to his bedroom closet and flipped through his file wallet to the heading, Future Investigations. Faber's name was there. He hadn't turned it in, and he hadn't erased it. He dialed the call on a secondary phone. The phone on the far end of the line called Faber's name a dozen times before the professor answered in a faint voice. Montague identified himself and was met with a lengthy silence. "Yes, Mr. Montague?" "Professor Faber. I have a rather odd question to ask. How many copies of the Bible are left in this country?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "I want to know if there are any copies left at all." "This is some sort of trap. I can't talk to just anyone on the phone." "How many copies of Shakespeare and Plato?" "None. You know as well as I do. None." Faber hung up. Montague put down the phone. None. A thing he knew, of course, from the firehouse listing. But somehow he had wanted to hear it from Faber himself. In the hall, Mildred's face was suffused with excitement. "Well, the ladies are coming over." Montague showed her a book. "This is the Old and New Testament. And don't start that again. It might be the last copy in this part of the world. You've got to hand it back tonight, don't you? Captain Beatty knows you got it, doesn't he?" "I don't think he knows which book I stole. But how do I choose a substitute? Do I turn to Mr. Jefferson? Mr. Thoreau? Which is least valuable? If I pick a substitute, and Beatty does know which book I stole, he'll guess we've an entire library here." Mildred's mouth twitched. "See what you're doing? You'll ruin us. Who's more important, me or that Bible?" She was beginning to shriek now, sitting there like a wax doll melting in its own heat. He could hear Beatty's voice. "Sit down, Montague. Watch. Delicately, like the petals of a flower. Light the first page. Light the second page. Each becomes a black butterfly. Beautiful, eh? Light the third page. From the second and so on, chain smoking, chapter by chapter. All the silly things the words mean, all the false promises, all the second-hand notions and time-worn philosophies." There sat Beatty, perspiring gently, the floor littered with swarms of black moths, that he had died in a single storm. Mildred stopped screaming as quickly as she started. Montague was not listening. "There's only one thing to do," he said. "Some time before tonight, when I give the book to Beatty, I've got to have a duplicate made." "You'll be here for the White Clown tonight, and the ladies coming over," cried Mildred. Montague stopped at the door with his back turned. "Millie?" A silence. "What?" "Millie, does the White Clown love you?" No answer. "Millie," he licked his lips, "does your family love you? Love you very much? Love you with all their heart and soul, Millie?" He felt her blinking slowly at the back of his neck. "Why'd you ask a silly question like that?" He felt he wanted to cry, but nothing would happen to his eyes or mouth. "If you see that dog outside," said Mildred, "give him a kick for me." He hesitated. Listening at the door, he opened it and stepped out. The rain had stopped and the sun was setting in the clear sky. The street and the lawn and the porch were empty. He let his breath go in a great sigh. He slammed the door. He was on the subway. "I'm numb," he thought. When did numbness really begin? In my face? In my body? The night I kicked the pill bottle in the dark? Like kicking a buried mine? The numbness will go away, he thought. It'll take time, but I'll do it, or Faber will do it for me. Someone, somewhere, will give me back the old face and the old hands the way they were. Even the smile, he thought, the old burnt-in smile, that's gone. I'm lost without it. Once, as a child, he had sat upon a yellow dune by the sea in the middle of the blue and hot summer day, trying to fill a sieve with sand because some cruel cousin had said, "Fill this sieve and you'll get a dime." And the faster he poured, the faster it sifted through with a hot whispering. His hands were tired and the sand was boiling. The sieve was empty. Seated there in the midst of July, without a sound, he felt the tears move down his cheeks. Now, as the vacuum underground rushed him through the dead cellars of town, jolting him, he remembered the terrible logic of that sieve, and he looked down and saw that he was carrying the Bible open. There were people in the suction train, but he held the book in his hands, and the silly thought came to him, if you read fast and read all, maybe some of the sand will stay in the sieve. But he read, and the words fell through, and he thought, in a few hours there will be Beatty, and here will be me, handing this over. So no phrase must escape me. Each line must be memorized. I will myself to do it. He clenched the book in his fists. Trumpets blared. "Denham's dentifrice!" Shut up, thought Montague. Consider the lilies of the field. "Denham's dentifrice!" Well, he's trying to memorize the Bible. And there's a commercial that keeps coming on the subway. That's the end of our 5 pages for today. Again, I hope you've had a great Memorial Day weekend, and I look forward to joining you tomorrow at 2:30 as we continue our journey through Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Again, thank you to Simon & Schuster Publishing for granting us permission to read this to you today. Bye-bye.